I'm Tom Trombley, the Deputy Director at the Castle Museum of Saginaw County History, and what I'm going to talk about today is the history of the Castle Building, which was originally Saginaw's main post office. Since the building opened to the public on July 3rd, 1898, it has really been a focal point of the community. It's really been a centerpiece of the community and a landmark, which is kind of ironic because when the city first gave the property to the federal government, there was a public outcry in the newspaper that wasn't probably a great idea since the federal government never took care of its property. However, within a few years, the community had greatly changed its mind about it. It's a building that's instantly recognizable and still looks much like it did in 1898. But the careful visitor will notice that the building has grown and changed, and not only is it no longer a post office, but it's much larger than it was in 1898. This is a photograph from 1837. When the building was designed, all federal buildings were designed through one office, the supervising architect of the Treasury. And it didn't matter if it was a major public building in Washington, D.C., powder magazine for a fort in the West, or a lighthouse on the Great Lakes, or the post office in Saginaw, Michigan. They would all be designed through this office. At that time, the supervising architect of the Treasury was William Martin Aiken. It was a politically appointed position, and at that time, there was also a policy in effect that buildings should reflect the heritage of the community in which they were located. If a building was going to be in the east, it might be in the colonial revival style. In the southwest, it would be a Spanish mission style building. When Aiken was looking for some type of inspiration for the building in Saginaw, he read a history of Saginaw that talked about the French heritage of the community. So he chose to design a building in the French Renaissance Revival style, and went further to even say that the building's towers were suggestive of the need for protection on the frontier. And he also felt that a building, and it was a policy, that the building should reflect the climate of the community in which it was located. So in Saginaw, they put a very steep roof on the building so it would shed the snow load. My office is on the second floor of the building, and I will attest to the fact that when it snows outside, the building quickly sheds its snow load. He went even further to say that he modeled the carving on the building after the flora and fauna of the area. You can see some eagles in the background, and I think the flora or the foliage is pretty much like you might expect to find here. However, I've yet to see a mountain ram in this area, and whatever is on the West Tower, I just hope I never see one. The building, as I said, was dedicated in 1898. It took about a year to build, and these are some construction photos that show the building going up. It's really kind of fun to see how it progressed from a vacant lot into a really major public building. As you can see, the building, when it was completed, was substantially different than the building is today, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. And as I said, originally there was some hesitation about building a federal building on this site. However, it quickly became a beloved landmark, and in the museum's collection, we have numerous souvenirs that have the building on its postcards, souvenir porcelain, fans. We have a whole variety of things that show the building. And the building functioned well as a post office, although probably not quite as efficiently as one might have hoped. We don't know a lot about not a lot of the original interior survives, but it was very different than the interior that we know today. It had one grand public space, which was an L-shaped lobby, and then the rest of the building on the first floor and most of the second floor was devoted to a large mail sorting room. We don't have much documentation for the interior, we do have the plans for the original lobby. The only detail that the public will see that remains when they come into the building is a circular staircase that is exposed again in the lobby. And these are the architectural drawings for that. And this is a photograph that shows the original lobby. The walls were finished with brick, and this is a circular staircase that you can see today when you come to the museum. The building really, as I said, became a beloved local landmark almost immediately. And it was a time, though, when how mail was being delivered was changing profoundly. 1898 was just a couple of years before the first automobile would come to Saginaw. And at that time, when the building was completed, mail would have been transported by train and then sent out to individual locations on horse-drawn wagons. Within a few years that changed, and what we can see from the historic photographs of the building was expanded and enlarged over the next years to really adjust to the changing delivery systems for mail. And these are photographs from the late 20s, early 30s of the building. And here's another view that shows the building in the early 30s. The early 1930s, in fact, the building had grown, this community had grown so much that the building no longer was adequate. And there was the government offered to build a new post office in Saginaw, and there was a public outcry that the building would be demolished. And the photograph that I have on the screen right now shows what the compromise was, that the building would be totally remodeled and expanded, and instead of being replaced by a new building. It just gives you an idea how extensive the renovations and remodeling was. When the building was completed as part of this renovation and rededicated in 1937, it was more than doubled in size. And this is a view from Jefferson Avenue looking east through the building during the renovation. And here's the reconstruction underway. This is in 1936. And to give an idea how profoundly the building was altered, this is the building in about 1900, and here it is in 1937 after the renovation. The entrance of the building was moved from Jefferson Avenue and Federal to two entrances on Federal. And this is just a photograph of the building shortly after the renovations were completed. On the interior, the building had a grand new public lobby, and it's one that still exists today and is very recognizable. This is the 1898 lobby. This is the 1937 lobby. It was in a slightly different location than the original lobby, and features an oak ceiling and walls covered with travertine from Colorado. And materials throughout the that were chosen to use during the renovation were chosen to be from the United States. There's a government policy that if at all possible, all of the materials should be from the United States. The focal point of the new lobby were 6 custom-made light fixtures, which have recently been restored and replicated and are once again in their original locations. The public that came to the building was most familiar with the building from that public lobby, but it really was a functional building. On the south side of the building, there was a huge mail dock where post office trucks could pull up, and on the interior was a huge sorting room in the building. Skylighted, it covers really over half of the first floor of the building is devoted to the space where mail was efficiently sorted and prepared to go out to the various places. Just some ideas of what that space looked like. The 1937 renovation resulted in a building that was efficient, yet still respected the original architecture of the building. And the building would function as Saginaw's main post office for almost 3 more decades after the renovation. In 1963, a new post office was dedicated on South Washington Avenue. That became Saginaw's main post office, and the Castle Building became a substation. It would continue to function in that capacity for over another decade. The last time the building was used as a post office was in 1976, and at that time a new federal office building was constructed. The new federal office building meant that the building was no longer needed, it was surplus property, and community leaders came to the rescue of the building. And what resulted was that in 1979 the building was transferred to the County of Saginaw, and the Historical Society of Saginaw County moved into the building as one of the tenants at that time and opened what would become known as the Castle Museum of Saginaw County History. Since that time, the building has been the home to Saginaw's countywide historical museum and has been carefully preserved and still reflects its original history as a post office, but also is used as a place to showcase Saginaw County's history.